Hello, everyone! Today, I'll be sharing some simple but very useful tips for cooking black beans. Black beans are a familiar food in many households and are loved by many for their distinctive nutty flavor. Black beans contain a lot of fiber, plant protein, vitamins, and minerals such as iron, potassium, and magnesium. Therefore, they are one of the most commonly used grains in daily meals and drinks. Many people like to use black beans to make sweet soups, porridges, nut milks, or refreshing drinks. However, not everyone knows how to cook black beans so that they soften quickly, are nutty, fragrant, and retain their natural flavor. So, today I'll share some simple tips to make cooking black beans easier and to make the finished product more delicious and appealing. If you also love black beans, let's get started. First, I'll prepare a sufficient amount of black beans and put them on a large plate. Putting the beans on a plate first makes it easier to observe and check the quality of each bean. Next, I'll start picking and removing any substandard beans. During the inspection, I'll discard any beans that are worm-eaten, shriveled, rotten, or have an unusual color. This is a simple but very important step, because if any damaged beans are mixed in during cooking, they can affect the flavor and quality of the entire pot of beans. I'll gently stir each portion of beans with my hand to observe them more closely. Good beans are usually glossy black, relatively uniform in size, and not cracked or broken. After removing all the substandard beans, I'll transfer the remaining black beans to a clean bowl. Next, I'll pour clean water into the bowl until the beans are completely submerged. Then, I'll gently rub them with my hands. During the rinsing process, I gently stir and rub the beans together with my fingertips. This step helps remove dust, dry shell fragments, soil, sand, or other impurities that may have clung to the surface of the beans during harvesting, storage, and transportation. After rinsing for a while, I'll notice the water starting to turn cloudy. At this point, I discard that water and check the beans inside. Once the initial cleaning is complete, I transfer all the black beans to another large bowl or container to continue soaking. Then, I add clean water again, this time completely submerging the beans, and let them soak for about 25 to 30 minutes. This is a step I usually apply before cooking black beans. During soaking, the beans will gradually absorb water and begin to soften. As a result, the beans will cook faster, saving cooking time and fuel. In addition, pre-soaking helps the beans swell more evenly. After cooking, the inside will usually be softer and more flavorful, and it prevents the outer layer from being soft while the inside remains hard. During the soaking process, I can also observe some shriveled or poor quality beans floating on the surface of the water. If I see them, I will remove them to ensure the remaining beans are more uniform. After the soaking time is over, I pour all the black beans into a basin or colander. Next, I place the beans under clean running water and rinse them again. I gently stir them continuously with my hands to completely remove the soaking water and any remaining impurities. After rinsing, the black beans are clean, have absorbed enough water, and are softer than before. After preparing and soaking the black beans, we'll move on to the cooking process. First, I put all the soaked and washed black beans into a pot. Next, I pour in about 1 liter of clean water. This amount of water is enough to completely submerge the beans, allowing them to cook slowly during simmering. Then, I add 1 teaspoon of regular salt and 1 teaspoon of salt to the pot. I stir gently to dissolve the salt evenly in the water before starting to cook. In my experience, adding salt at the beginning makes the broth more flavorful, and the beans will have a more balanced taste when cooked. Once everything is prepared, I place the pot on the stove and begin to cook. Initially, I'll use medium heat to gradually increase the temperature. During this process, the beans will continue to absorb water and begin to soften from the inside. When the water in the pot starts boiling vigorously, I open the lid to check. At this point, a layer of foam usually appears on the surface of the water. I use a ladle or spoon to gently skim off all of this foam. Skimming the foam helps make the broth clearer and also makes the finished black beans look more appealing. After skimming off all the foam, I close the lid of the pot. Next, I reduce the heat and continue simmering for about 10 to 15 minutes. Simmering over low heat helps the heat to spread evenly and steadily, so the beans will soften gradually from the outside in without becoming mushy too quickly. During this process, the black beans will slowly cook, the skin retaining its shape while the inside gradually becomes soft, nutty, and more fragrant. After the simmering time, the characteristic aroma of black beans will begin to spread. At this point, the beans have absorbed enough water, swelled evenly, and are about to reach their ideal softness. After simmering the black beans for another 10 to 15 minutes, I'll open the lid to check if they're cooked through. First, I'll scoop out some black beans and place them on a small plate. Then, I'll use the back of a spoon to gently press the beans down onto the plate. If the beans are easily flattened and the inside is soft and tender, it means they've reached the desired level of doneness. Conversely, if the beans are still hard, or the inside isn't evenly soft, I'll continue simmering for a little longer. Once the beans are soft enough, I'll move on to the step of adding sweetness. First, I'll pour the bean broth into a separate large bowl. I'll keep all the beans in the pot. Separating the broth and the beans at this stage will help the beans absorb the sugar more easily during the stirring process. Next, I put the pot of beans back on the gas stove and added about 200 grams of sugar. Then I gently stirred with a ladle or chopsticks to coat the beans evenly with sugar. I stirred slowly and continuously to avoid crushing the beans and to help the sugar dissolve and penetrate into each bean. When cooked with sugar, the beans gradually become shinier and begin to absorb the sweetness. I continued stirring and cooking for a while longer until the mixture began to simmer gently and the sugar had blended with the beans. After the beans had been stirred with sugar for enough time, I slowly poured the previously separated bean water back into the pot. I stirred gently to mix the water and beans together again. At this point, the water would also absorb more sweetness and aroma from the beans that had been stirred with sugar earlier. Finally, I covered the pot and continued cooking. I simmer it until the water in the pot starts boiling again and the flavors have blended together. Then I turn off the heat. With this method, the black beans will have more time to absorb the sugar, helping the beans become evenly sweet from the inside, instead of just the water being sweet. After completion, the beans retain their shape, are soft, nutty, and fragrant, while the water has a more harmonious and rich sweetness. So, my black bean drink is complete. Besides enjoying it warm, you can also add ice to make a refreshing cold drink, perfect for hot days. With the natural nutty flavor of black beans combined with a mild sweetness, this is a delicious and refreshing beverage. If you love black beans, try this recipe. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next delicious recipes and tips.